He's here and he's beautiful. And of course, I'm talking about Brooks Lee. His beginning to his career has been exceptional and probably only exceeded by the fact that Jose Miranda refuses to make an out. That and more as we get you locked on Twins.
You are Locked On Twins, your daily Minnesota Twins podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, hello again and welcome back to Locked On Twins. I'm your host, Brandon Warren, and you can unfollow me on my now unlocked Twitter account at Brandon_WARNE. I have been watching the Twins for the last 30 plus years, covering them for about half that, and I'm joined by Mr. Dave Brown at Answer Dave Brown on the tweets. Set him straight, Dave. Why are you here?
Well, I haven't really decided, but I'll tell you this. I've been a baseball reporter since 1998, and in the Baseball Writers Association of America, those guys that screw up the awards every year, and the Hall of Fame, since 2012. So, and I voted for Joe Mauer, so you should like me just because of that.
Yeah, we actually had an episode. I think that was your initial episode, and then you and I were like, "Hey, this is fun. Let's have Dave on."
We click.
Yeah. So, okay, thanks for making Locked On Twins your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Hi there. And of course, as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, we're your team every day. Love to hear from you in the comments. If you're in the live audience, the live studio audience, or if you are watching us after the fact, again, we just appreciate you greatly. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, give us a high five. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as the playoffs wind down, the sports stop sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is keeping things hot by hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus every single day. That's right. There's something for everyone, new or old. Customers, that is, not age. Every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. A little later today, you can catch the Twins' hometown broadcast on SiriusXM with Chris Atterbury and a cast of characters. You can catch every pitch of that on the SXM app. Just download that and search Twins. We expect it to be Chris Paddock going against Chris Flexen, so it'll be a Chris entanglement with the first pitch scheduled for 7:10 p.m. Central at Guaranteed Rate Field. Looking like Paddock, Flexen, Oberfetti, and then Pablo Day to wrap it up with Drew Thorpe, who's actually, I think, been pretty dang good for the White Sox, if I'm not mistaken, Dave.
He's been throwing a lot of change-ups, and he's been getting people out with the change-ups. So watch out for that Twins batters. The White Sox starting pitching has been not terrible. They have one All-Star, Crochet, and Eric Fetty is like on the list of guys that can't get in but might. Mm-hmm. And this Drew Thorpe has been pretty good. He came over in the Dylan Cease trade. So
yeah, I think
Dylan Cease, why not have a guy that was traded for him?
Well, I think Fetty is like top 10 or 15 in Fangraphs WAR. So quite a find after he was pretty middling with the Nationals, goes overseas, and he comes back and does a pretty good like Colby Lewis impersonation.
Oh, that's good. I like that. That's a good comp. I like that.
Well, and the Twins were always in the mix to sign him. I think he hit free agency and went back to the Rangers, and he was perfectly solid, like number 3 starter, maybe on his best day, a number 2. So I like Colby Lewis. He was pretty good.
Only Falvey had Googled Eric Fetty.
Yeah, right. I thought they'd be in the mix for him given their budgetary constraints and the fact that some guys coming back over, they find that next gear, and then they come back and strike out like 7 or 8 batters per 9, walk like 2, and get to be like a 2.5, 3 win WAR, wins above replacement pitcher. It just seems like that's kind of the prototype, and Fetty fits that. So we'll see if he's a White Sox a month from now, but for now, the Twins have to contend with him. Say, Dave, who do you think is more worthy of the top spot in today's program? Is it Brooks Lee? Is it Jose Miranda? Ordinarily, it'd probably be Carlos Correa because he made the All-Star team, but we had an entire episode that dropped on Sunday night about the inimitable Carlos Correa making the All-Star team. Long-form discussion. We talked about snubs, we talked about flubs, we talked about dubs, and all that good stuff. I think we should go with Brooks Lee, though.
one of the things that's kind of funny that you mentioned this, Brandon, one of the things that Brooks Lee's quick emergence in the majors makes me wonder is, well, who are the Twins going to trade now? Because when you look at how well he's doing and how well Miranda is doing, and eventually Royce Lewis is not going to be on the IL anymore, he's going to come back. They might have a need in the starting rotation that can be addressed with some of this excess offense that Hopkins has created. So it kind of makes me wonder, well, who's going to go? I mean, it's not really the only thing, but Brooks Lee has been. We kind of said this too. I mean, he's been great. He's not going to, OPS over 1,000 probably for the whole year. But what we did say was expect a guy with kind of a shorter learning curve, maybe a little more polish, ready to go at the start. And he looks ready to go. He is like a duck in water, which is to say ducks like water and they swim well in it. So Brooks Lee has been terrific so far.
Yeah, not to be too much of a spoiler, but I think I'm going to write something this week at Access Twins about how Edouard Julien might be the odd man out and a good trade candidate. And, I'm not going to dive into too much of the specifics because I've got some, I think, compelling, not arguments, but points. But for Brooks Lee, the bat has come as advertised. He controls the strike zone quite well. But this isn't what I would normally want to highlight, but the defense at third base has been good. He had a play that was it was a bunt, and he actually instinctively, it was one of the first balls he came in on, and I think Glenn Perkins couldn't say enough about how well he came in on the ball, fielded it, and for a pretty speedy runner, threw him out still by, I think it was 2 full steps. Honestly, and I made the Adam Silver graphic that says, "Get ready to learn Chinese, buddy." I put, "Get ready to learn second base, buddy." I think Royce Lewis comes back and plays second base because between his throwing, not necessarily issues, but definitely question. And the fact that, again, it's early, but Brooks Lee looks the part at third base. I mean, an embarrassment of riches to be sure, but Royce Lewis at second base is looking pretty appealing to me.
Maybe. The only thing about that I don't like is just no experience at second base. I don't believe or not anything significant. I do know Lewis came up as a shortstop, and then they made him a center fielder. So you'd think that he could go play second. I mean, hey, if Mookie Betts can play shortstop, it isn't exactly the same thing, but
right,
definitely a possibility. And if the Twins are made better on defense significantly by Lee, and so far he's been really solid over there, I could see this happening. Absolutely. But I would say before you
interrupt really.
It's not like Lewis has been hurt playing third base. Some people have mentioned, well, the throws aren't good for his hamstrings. And I think athletically speaking, there might be actually more running at second than there would be at third. So that is something to consider, I guess.
I think he's a better athlete than Lee too. So maybe it does work.
Right. Lee, sort of on this note, when Carlos Correa but got hit with the pitch and left the game, he slid over to short. So did he not?
No, Castro slid over.
Oh, I thought are you sure?
To me, that was what was interesting.
I'm looking this up. Not that I don't believe you.
Lee stayed at third. Kyle Farmer played second, and Willie Castro played short. And to me, I would have thought Farmer would have gone to short and Castro to second. But they seem to value Castro's ability at short above Farmer's. I'm not sure what that says about Farmer.
Can I blame a Bally Sports graphic that might or might not be wrong?
There you go. That could be it. I mean, but I know that Castro
did play. He wasn't short at some point in this game because it says so in the box score. But maybe I just looked at the wrong.
Yeah, well, I just know that Willie Castro made a really nice play on a Jose Altuve ball at short and threw him out. And I remember thinking, I was not confident when I saw that ball hit, just based on where my brain was thinking it was going to go, that play would be made by whoever was at short, whether it was anyone other than Correa. The play was made. Willie looked good. He looked really good. And, I think that it was interesting to see, though, that they preferred Farmer at second and Castro at short, at least to start. By the way,
yeah, I keep looking for this Brooks Lee shortstop business, so I must have made it up in my own head.
Well, by the way, so maybe Royce on his rehab plays second base and they send Paul Mahler over there. Paul Mahler from St. Paul, so it's not like he's going to have to go very far, assuming that the Saints are in town. But that's who worked with Brian Dozier when he moved to short and went from, I wouldn't even say a middling shortstop. I'd say a questionable shortstop to a pretty dang good second baseman. I believe he had 1 Gold Glove in there. So maybe that's the key. Maybe he goes back to third. Brooks Lee plays second. I think the better athlete should play second. And I think Brooks Lee, to me, looks like he has the more accurate, better arm. Here's
the thing, though. Here's the thing that we haven't. Lee is still relatively, or Royce Lewis is still relatively young, but it would be out of his comfort level a little bit in midseason, coming off an injury, which is coming off another injury, to change positions in the middle of the year. That's the only thing that I would say really might keep Rockhead from putting Royce at second base. I would say that has to be a consideration. Maybe it won't stop it, but that has to be one of the things that they thumb through in the file.
Yeah, no question about that. Well, let's take a quick pause. When we come back, I do have one more thing about Royce Lewis that might throw a wrinkle into that. Then we'll probably want to talk about Jose Miranda hitting everything in sight and then getting hit, and that inciting a possible beanball war with the Astros. How's that for a turn of phrase? But first, a quick word from our sponsors. I love sports, and I love them so much. I never want them to stop. I can't say that I speak for Dave Brown, but I suspect he's the same. Okay, thanks. Playoffs have wound down, and we have fewer games than before. Baseball's still going strong, so that's good for me. That's good for you. But the sports in general aren't sportsing the way we want them to. Still, FanDuel keeps us engaged, keeps the sports going whenever and wherever you want. You just open the app and dream up any bets that you have anytime you're in the mood. And this summer is FanDuel is hooking up all customers, new and existing, with a boost or a bonus every single day. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. If you just head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer. I know the Twins are favored on Monday against the White Sox. I know it's an over-under of 9. I lost the page I had up with the specific odds, but the Twins were not only straight up favorites, but also against the money line. They were minus 1.5, I think, against the spread. So Twins obviously favored, even though they're on the road against the stinky White Sox. And so check them out. It's FanDuel. They're the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, Dave, how about this, though, for a wrench into the system? Do you think it matters that Royce is a Scott Boras client and Scott Boras is going to want his guy playing as premium of a position as possible? Or maybe it doesn't matter that much because he also has Correa, who is did Correa fire him? I don't think he did he?
That's a good question that I was not ready for.
He joined with Boras because Boras wasn't going to get the commission from his first deal. And there were some people saying that he signed that short first deal so he could opt out and then Boras could get the commission on the big deal. So with that said, he's got Boras guys possibly up the middle. I'm not positive who Brooks Lee is represented by, but either way,
I did not look into that either. Yeah, Correa is definitely on his second agent. WME. You know what that is?
No, I mean, so Correa is now represented by Scott Boras. So that maybe that doesn't factor into it, but
Correa. Well, you asked about Royce Lewis being. I think that is a thing that I did not think of. That is definitely in the calculus. What Scott Boras is going to say, although. Yeah, it is still early. I don't know how much longer until Royce Lewis goes to free agency. I don't know if we want to talk about that.
Well, and I also think Boras's influence and swagger and everything it's taken a hit. Let's be honest. I mean, Jordan Montgomery's been just dreadful this year. Blake Snell's been dreadful. And those free agencies, you can say what you want about how it ended up, but those were you have to admit, at least somewhat misplayed.
I think that Royce Lewis is the kind of player that if the Twins go to him and say, hey, we need you to play second base, he's like, I'm there already. You don't even have to wait for him to answer. He's going to get a little glove and move over to second. So I think sooner rather than later would be nice, just because, Carlos Correa would like some time to coordinate with a double play partner and that sort of thing. But yeah, I think it's in a way, this is a nice problem to have. And I still think no matter where Royce Lewis plays or Brooks Lee plays, the Twins have one more infielder than they need when you compare it to one more pitcher that they might need. So I don't know if any of these people that we're talking about are going to be traded. It could be Edouard Julien. It could be somebody else in the minors, another prospect that's on the rise, instead of a major league player anyway. But I think that the Twins definitely, the strength all season has been their depth. And one way or another, that is really what's going to get them through, be it on the field, or in some sort of trade.
Basically, every Twins player that's a big deal has missed time this year. So, I mean, it's something to consider. Replacing Brooks Lee, I forgot to mention, Luke Keeschel will play for the Twins at the Futures game here coming up isn't that usually the Sunday of All-Star Week, if I'm not mistaken? So another infield prospect. He does have some outfield on his ledger too. So we'll see what happens there, but he has had a really nice season. Another infielder who is somewhat displaced is Jose Miranda, who went 13 straight plate appearances reaching base. Got hit by a pitch that some people weren't happy about. And there was some kind of ugly back and forth. It was not a jovial back and forth, we could say. But hard to overstate how crazy that stretch was for Mr. Jose Miranda.
Getting hits in 12 straight at-bats is nuts, especially for – I mean, we're not talking about an Arias kind of profile where, you can the guy gets hits every which way and, kind of a power hitter. But, Miranda has been his contact has been so much better this season. He's been not a huge amount of home runs, but he's been able to drive the ball well.
Yep.
It's been, it's certainly, put him on the radar as far as long-term with the team. Like, before his shoulder injury, it's not the first time he's kind of broken through and had good major league success, but he was a guy before the season. We were wondering, are we going to see that again? Is the shoulder going to hinder him? Is he going to have to move to first base? And his defense at third hasn't been awesome, but he has caught most of he's been okay. He's been okay. So
he only walks about 5% of the time, but he only strikes out about 15% of the time.
Yeah.
And he makes enough contact. I mean, he's hitting .331 as of right now. He had another hit today. Shocker there. Hitting .331, .373, .533. There'll be some regression there, but based on the amount of times he puts the ball in play, I don't think it's unreasonable for him to have a season sometime with 25 home runs and 40 doubles because of the way he drives the baseball. Maybe he gets a little extra lift and hits 30 homers one year, but I think he's going to rack up the extra base hits between doubles and home runs to where it wouldn't be that bad to have him as a first base, third base, DH, mix and match, and get him in the lineup every day one way or another. And I think, too, what's interesting is that Glenn Perkins keeps bringing up how he likes to hit the ball, the breaking balls from the right-handed pitchers to where it's going away from him as opposed to lefty coming into him. And that's a little counterintuitive.
No, for sure. And as far as how he fits in this season, too, if there happens to be a pitching matchup that is unfavorable, Rocco's got choices. It's not like you have to absolutely play him against, you can mix and match in terms of style or handedness or whatever. The Twins' depth will protect him to a certain extent as well. So that's something also to keep in mind as far as sustaining his numbers. Maybe they're not going to be cumulative in a cumulative sense,
right?
Getting to 25 or 30 home runs, but maybe not that. But you look at his percentages and splits as far as that goes, and he's a guy that it's kind of perfect for the kind of. I don't know if Rocco. Maybe Rocco would prefer to just have 7 All-Stars or whatever, but as far as being able to use his bench as much as he does, Miranda fits in very well in that sense.
Yeah, just stop pinch hitting Manny Margot because he's like 0 for 18 as a pinch hitter this year.
He's bound to come through sooner or later. This is the time. This is the time.
I don't expect you to be some sort of great Twins historian just based on the fact that you're fairly new to watching this team on a daily basis. But can you remember like the most comparable or best young Twins core or like most deep and strong offense than this? Because like I come back to Joe Mauer, Justin Morneau, Michael Kadire, Jason Kubel was a pretty good core. Torrey Hunter, Jock Jones, Corey Koski was all right. AJ Przinsky at the beginning of that, Joe Mauer at the end. Or, you go far enough back to where it's Gary Gaetti, Tom Hernandez,
and Herbeck. Yeah.
And Herbeck is a pretty dang good trio. Is it crazy to say that this group might be more talented and more deep than those?
No, I don't think so. I mean, looking back, Gaetti, Herbeck, Bernansky, that's pretty good.
It's pretty nasty.
It's not, but they are deeper or wider, or there's more of them, and they have more help these days. There's more guys in that lineup, than talking 84 Twins for sure. The line that those guys petered out at some point. There's one too many Houston Jimenez's and so forth, but that would come up later. But yeah, those guys with Kirby Puckett as well.
He's all right too.
He's all right. But I don't know how many, like, if they're all great players or what, but I think there are lots of very good players in this mix of, Brooks Lee looks like maybe he's going to be, I don't know about an all-star kind of guy, but something like that. A guy who can make an all-star team. Royce Lewis certainly has some awesome potential. Miranda, maybe like a half step behind Lee. And there's more guys after that. So it's very encouraging for the future, but also for the season, because I generally, we talk about Margot not getting hits against in a pinch hitter role, but the pieces in this lineup fit together pretty well, and the Twins can kind of come at you from angles that most other teams don't have. So no matter what you have on the mound, the Twins are going to have something for you.
Another part of that 81 core that I glossed over is the only person that I ever saw my wife get starstruck over. Do you have any idea who it is? Because I bet you won't ever guess.
Was it a pitcher?
No. You remember the Buck 90 fan club?
No.
Tim Laudner. So I used to be on a podcast with him, or a radio show actually, and we developed a pretty good relationship. He'd call me B-Dub and, give me the wink and the nod. And so one time we went to a ball game and he was kind of chopping it up with me. And my wife was just kind of like, and he's not like, if you're listening, it's just kind of a stars in her eyes. Andrea Kramer talking to Tom Brady back in the day situation. YouTube that, it's pretty good. And it was just so funny that a career decent catcher who was an all-star one time had my wife just completely shook. And he's bald and he's not particularly young. He's a good enough looking guy, but I still talk to her about that. And it just,
you want him to come on the show instead of me? Is that what we're getting at? Or do you want to relive?
He's got enough on his plate right now.
He is on TV. You're right.
Right, exactly. Let's take our second and final break. When we'll come back, I want to talk about Matt Wallner coming up, because again, that's another guy who, he had a hit today that was on 117 miles per hour off the bat. If Matt Wallner is back, this offense takes on yet another dimension. But we'll talk about that when we come back here in just a minute. We got to show some love for Prize Picks, America's #1 DFS app with over 5 million active members. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports, because unlike the other apps, you just pick more than or less than on stat projections and watch your winnings roll in. You pick between 2 to 6 There's multipliers and all that fun stuff. And you don't got to edge out those guys who are playing 50 entries or doing the algorithm stuff. It's just you and the numbers. And so you can win up to 100 times your money with as few as 4 correct picks. So like turning $10 into 1,000. And again, with NBA and NHL playoffs over, hoops are still rolling on with the WNBA. All-Star games coming up here. You got the Olympics going on, but the superstars, there's young stars in the league like Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. There's also older stars, and I don't want to say old like older as a pejorative connotation, but you got Brianna Stewart, you got Nafisa Collier, you got Sabrina Ionescu, and Kelsey Plum is a personal favorite of mine. With them, you could win up to 100 times your cash watching them ball out. And Prize Picks is available in more than 30 states across the country. So see if they're available in your neck of the woods. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB. They'll deposit match you up to $100. Again, that code is LOCKEDONMLB on Prize Picks for a deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. And we also have to show some respect to Tax Network USA. Here on Locked On Twins, we pride ourselves and think of ourselves as men of Minnesota Twins. And it is our job to keep you up to speed, whether it's spring training, postseason, playoffs, that sort of thing. In season, we got draft, we got games every day. As I tell Dave, you look forward 2 weeks, you look back 2 weeks, but you also talk about today. Speaking of today, let's talk about what's year-round, both today and in the future. Collections season, because even though tax season is over, that doesn't mean the IRS doesn't have a postseason as well. They're coming after you, whether it's in season, out season, postseason, you name it, duck season, rabbit season, whatever it is. And the IRS can garnish your wages, levy your bank accounts, and even seize your property. Don't let the IRS tag you and target you, because the licensed professionals at tax experts at Tax Network USA, they got you. They're going to go to bat for you. Whether you have, like Dave and me, being independent contractors, that tax stuff can get complicated. You got to save money. You got to make sure that you have enough when tax time comes. You pay your estimated taxes. Whatever you want to do to take care of your tax obligations, they're here for you. And with over 14 years of experience and an A+ rating at the Better Business Bureau, the BBB, take advantage of Tax Network, who has saved their clients over $1 billion in tax debt, whether you owe taxes, have complicated tax matters, or you just finally hit that parlay on FanDuel that is going to have you raking in the cash, raking just like Carlos Correa. Call 1-800-549-1000 or visit tnusa.com/lockedon, or just check the link in the description of this show, whether you're on YouTube or listening on Apple Podcasts, wherever you're listening. We got that cool little link that you can check out. It's Tax Network USA. Get help with your taxes from the experts. All right, Dave, we're coming down the home stretch here, and Matt Wallner gets the recall. In fact, when I was not tweeting personally, I did see that Matt Wallner was scratched from the lineup on Saturday, and it ended up being that he was being called up, and Austin Martin going down with an oblique. Those things can linger. So really hard to say what that means in the near term for his return. But Matt Wallner, being International League Player of the Month for June, certainly bolsters his case. And there's been a lot of times, Dave, where you and I talked about how much he was struggling down there. To see him turn it around like that, and then that ball he drove, not into the gap necessarily, but the center fielder had to range for it. And Glenn Perkins said that right there is the swing. Again, I'm not saying he's going to be Joey Gallo the second, or slightly better or slightly worse, but he's the kind of bat where if you slot a guy like that in like your 7 spot in the order, or 6 when he's really rolling, you've got a pretty dang deep lineup.
I just like you do, not to discount anything you said about his offense. I just like that he settles the defense down. Remember that it seems like a funny thing to say, but left field has been kind of a difficult deal for the Twins, with mostly odd plays, but a lot of different people have played out there. It hasn't really clicked. If there's been one weak spot in the lineup in terms of offense and defense, it's kind of been that. They don't really have Margot plays right field sometimes when Kepler doesn't. but they don't really have anybody else other than Kepler.
He's got a strange
Wallner.
year defensively too. Even today, he had that ball that he caught
Yeah,
like,
right. The dive where he kind of rolled up into him. Yeah.
baby or a cat falling out of a tree or something.
Yeah, it's a little strange sometimes how he plays the outfield, but Wallner's like you can if something knock on wood happens to Kepler, you could put him in right field. And Wallner has made some really nice plays already.
He's crazy athletic for his size.
Definitely, obviously a great athlete, and it's nice to see that he has repaired his confidence. I'm sure that was the biggest deal of all for him. Going down to the minors, the shock of losing his job, being demoted, and then having to get your swing right too. That's a lot. That's why they pay him the big bucks or the medium bucks. But he, it helps the team. But more important in the big struggle of Matt Wallner's career, if he's being the best version of himself, that's a guy that can help a major league team, and it's good to see.
Quickly before we go, did you have any issues with the guys on either side getting hit by pitches in this series?
I always like to think that none of that is like on purpose that people are trying to hit each other. But what I get the feeling that like almost every time the guys in the dugout maybe it's because of the adrenaline of the moment. I think they all think it's on purpose every time. I do. Their first thought is that's not cool. And maybe it isn't so much like hitting a guy on purpose to bruise him or whatever, but maybe it is to throw inside and to knock him off the plate a little bit and get them thinking, get their feet moving, that kind of thing. So it isn't so much a pitcher trying to like literally hurt somebody, but it is a little bit of lack of command with really hard fastballs, and it's just kind of dangerous. And you wish people would be more careful when they, But I think that both teams kind of showed restraint for all the hit by pitches and twice for Correa, and the Twins, I believe, lead the league by a wide margin.
Fairly wide.
Yep. So it's scary, and that's kind of a tricky thing for Rocco to navigate a little bit.
I'll say this: I don't think any pitchers are losing sleep over hitting these guys.
Yeah, right. But then it gets back into how obvious do you want to make retaliation and stepping up the, Ken Harrelson used to talk like that all the time on White Sox broadcast. Wimpy, somebody's got to throw inside on these guys, or they're going to go to town on our team all year. So, I mean, that's how they think. So I
watched a game recently that was Wimpy and Hawk. It was on YouTube, and I think it might have been a Twins White Sox game, but it was a lot of fun. And then I read Wimpy's backstory, and it made me really sad. So
Wimpy's got a heck of a backstory. He would be a good guest to have. Tom Paciorek is a very good guy and tells good stories about baseball and life.
What an amazing name too. Well, hey, we have taken up far more time than we've been allotted, but if you know us, you know that's what we do. He's Dave Brown. I'm Brandon Warren. And in unison, Dave, let's say it. We will see ya
tomorrow night. Oh.